Good morning. This is the Blaine's World webcast that can be found each week on Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn. You can also listen in on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, and you get more information and find out about previous shows on our website, which is behind me, blainesworld.net. I'm your host, Blaine Greenfield, and I'm here in my Zoom studio in Fairview, North Carolina. Each week, we focus on positive news and information about people and organizations in both Western North Carolina and throughout the country. And toward that end, it's my pleasure to introduce Dr. John Highsmith, owner of Lightsmith Photography, as being my guest today. And John, welcome aboard. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you, Blaine. Appreciate that.
Okay, and you can, by the way, before I forget, you should wave to all your fans and friends who are watching this. So that's
both of them. Okay, yeah, thank you.
Great.
Appreciate that. A little bit of background. I grew up in Asheville, so this whole area is home to me for a long time. I won't say how many years. And ended up going to school in Davidson and then at Chapel Hill for dental school. Did a year at the VA in Baltimore and realized that I really wanted to come back to the mountains. So started back here in beautiful downtown Clyde, North Carolina. Been here for 39 years practicing dentistry. And I met Blaine at the Hart Theater several times. And I've been involved with that theater for probably 38 or so years, back when my wife and I did My Fair Lady way back then.
What, you were an actor then?
I've been in about 10 shows.
I didn't know that. Yeah.
I've been on the board twice, been in some shows. My wife's been in a couple. For the past 12 or so years, I've photographed all the Hart shows, unless I'm out of town or something like that. And that's where I ran into you. I would, usually photograph a dress rehearsal, and I ran into you there, and who is this guy? But that is a lot of fun. So photographing the plays, I really enjoy that. The Hart Theater is wonderful, as you know. One of the best theaters in Western North Carolina. Fortunately, we have a lot of arts in Western North Carolina, visual and theatrical as well. So it's a wonderful organization.
Well, John, let's just jump in a little bit before we even talk about Hart and some of the work you do there. I'm just curious, in terms of your background, which I've never really asked you. So you went to college, and so you were doing college thing, you were doing some theater stuff. But when did you get into photography, or when did you decide you also wanted to be a photographer?
Well, I started when I was about 16. So a friend of mine in high school got me interested in it. And back then, this is way before digital and all that cool stuff. So, if you're doing photography yourself, then you're doing black and white and developing things in your basement and doing enlargement, stuff like that. So I was doing all that. I had an enlarger at home. I spent many an all-nighter in the college darkroom doing yearbooks, photography and stuff like that, various projects. So back in the old days of the smelly chemicals on your fingers and stuff like that in the darkroom, and watching the image come up on just a blank piece of paper and watching it develop under the red lights, it's just phenomenal. It's a lot of fun. But I have to say, now that I'm into it, the digital photography is really so much. There are a few purists out there as far as photographs who will still photograph film or larger format black and white, which is just amazing, but just very time intensive. And digital is just so much easier. You have so much creativity in what you can do with an image with Photoshop. You can do pretty much anything you want, and it's really it really allows for whatever creative spark that you want to do. You can do pretty much anything you want. I typically don't do a lot of manipulation in Photoshop. I'll do some editing here and there, and sometimes some compositing. Compositing is where you take different pictures and put them together. The old-fashioned way is like in the Soviet Union, they would switch heads when the outs, and all of a sudden he's not there on the wall anymore. That's the old days. But now all that stuff is just very, very easy. And also with AI, you can make stuff up like that, which is going to be an interesting future, but not really doing anything with that. But basically, I will take some photographs and I'll play with them a little bit. Sometimes I'll change the background, and I'll show you some of that in the underwater model photography stuff that I'm doing. But most of my photographs are kind of straight up.
So when did you decide then you were studying to become a dentist and you became a dentist? When did you decide to then add this, I guess, as your hobby or a passion, or when you weren't doing dentistry, how'd you
I've
get
been
into this?
well, I've been doing photographs for 50 years, so it's just something that's gone along with it. I really enjoy the creativity aspects of dentistry as well as photography, and I've done some sculpture and that kind of stuff as well, which I definitely enjoy. Um, but the the other thing that, and I'll get into this a little bit later, is adding to it is in scuba diving, because I've been a scuba diver for probably 30 years, and doing underwater photography is really a lot of fun. So, well, I'll show some of those in a little bit. We should go ahead, instead of talking, we sort of show some of what
I will, but
we're
I'll
doing.
just ask you, I'll just mention one other thing to you to remind you. But I remember the very first time I met you, I was at Green Sage, a restaurant, and I
Uh,
saw this guy putting up these really cool pictures, and I struck up a conversation and just knocked my socks off that this wasn't your full-time gig. This was your hobby passion, I guess. And you told me, I think then, and you told me one other time, a great reason why you still practice dentistry, or what's
well, yeah,
yeah.
what I said was, and I say this to patients all the time. Basically, yeah, I fix teeth so I can buy cameras. Now, and my lovely wife Sandra, doesn't mind that, because it's also a lot cheaper than cars or mistresses.
How
So
many cameras do you have now?
I
Ballpark.
at least a dozen. I don't know. But through the years, I mean, they don't last forever, something like that. So I've had quite a few through the years.
And
But
do you still have your first camera?
one of the first, not
Really?
the old Yashica, but the other stuff, down in the basement, the old, twin lens reflex cameras that take 2 1/4 negative, black and white negative film. Yeah, those are down in the basement someplace. I usually don't throw stuff away.
But you mean as
Um,
as a kid, so you don't have like a 7-year-old, your first Brownie camera or anything along those lines?
I was too, brownies were before my time,
Okay.
amazingly enough.
So
Um,
so I love your
but
idea, John. You were saying to me off the air, we came up with this idea that rather than just talk about photography, I think to show it really makes it come alive. And if I could put you on the spot, to just talk a little bit about some of the stuff you've done, and we'll kind of talk around it. But I'm going to let you do the honors in that I believe we can screen share. And why don't you put up the first series of uh, slides, pictures from some of the work you've done in Hart. Is that correct?
yeah,
Yeah, there we go.
yeah,
That,
these
that,
are,
that-
what I'll start with is some pictures from the Hart Theater. And the nice thing about doing that is I'll go to a dress rehearsal where there's, you're taking pictures, while there's an audience is really annoying. So I wouldn't want to do that. So at a dress rehearsal, the visuals are still the same. Sometimes they're still working on lines and stuff like that. But I can walk around and get different angles and stuff like this. This is a show that's Pasquale Lacourt, who's an amazing actor, just a wonderful guy. This is a show that I pretty much produced. It was I think it was the last full show that we got in before COVID. So in 2020, it was called The 13 Clocks, written by James Thurber, which was a lot of fun. And actually, there's another one from that. Um, this is from the Hart Theater. I don't actually remember the show. So it's been a number of years, probably about 7 or 8 years from that one. Um, and this is 13 clocks. Actually, that's me with the eye patch.
oh, what you were in it?
Yeah, I was in that. I was in that
Oh,
show.
so sorry, I missed it. Yeah,
It's Do you remember the author James Thurber?
sure.
Yeah, he wrote a book called The 13 Clocks, and my daughter was rummaging around in a script store in New York City one day and found out that someone had made a play out of it and brought it home and said, "Hey, Dad, look what I found." And so I'm like, "We've got to do this." So we ended up doing it with Hart. A bunch of the students at Western actually helped, co-directed it, and it was absolutely wonderful. So we did that over in the Fangmeyer. And there's you. A
Just a
couple of
recent show.
2 weeks ago at Lynn Donnelly. Terrible shot of her, but that was, there's
Okay.
Lynn's amazing. Lynn is
And
amazing.
by the way, just to mention it, Lynn was just really knocked everybody's socks off. She was in this one woman play playing a press agent, right?
Yeah,
And she was just great.
Hollywood agent who got her
Yeah.
start her first client was Barbara Streisand, and so, but just basically telling stories and holding court for an hour and a half with no one else on stage, and that's not easy to do.
Yeah,
That is
she
that.
she just was great. And the next one was Pasquale again, I think.
Yeah, that's Pasquale again in the 13 Clocks,
Okay.
and this one is something more recent at heart, which of course I can't remember. I think it was the sort of a mythological character, but anyway, and it was Spam-A-Lot,
Oh,
which
Spamalot, yeah, which was
a lot of
fantastic.
fun. Yeah.
Just
Um,
watching these are amazing because, and I've seen a lot of these, they come alive with your pictures. They're just like fantastic. Which was this one?
this is Willy Wonka.
Okay, yeah.
This is last, just last summer or something like that. So
Do you have a favorite show, like in terms of your taking pictures of a show? Do you have preferences to kind of show you want to see?
not really. They're all, but the ones that sometimes the lighting in different shows is more challenging than others. If something like this where you have a nice black background, that's a lot of fun. That's Pasquale again in Act of God, which they did a few months ago.
Now, when you're taking pictures also, are you able to pay attention to the show as well?
Yes, mostly. But if I go to the show later, it's always like, oh, I don't remember them saying that, because I mean I'm paying attention the uh, um, uh, to the visual, so I'm not really paying that much attention to what they're saying. But yeah, I still follow it, but I'm mostly focusing, so to speak, on what I'm doing. That was oh, not Constellations, but the other one
Yeah,
about
just
uh,
recently, yeah, it was,
yeah,
boy, was that fantastic.
yeah. This is one of my favorite ones. This was when Steve Lloyd was playing Scrooge in Christmas Carol, and there's the one of the ghosts of Christmas Past behind him. I love the lighting on that one. That's one of my favorite ones. So, and so a couple of headshots for the theater. There's Lynn Donnelly, yay, looking good. Um, Now, the the other thing that I love to do is scuba dive, and underwater photography is just a lot of fun. Um, this is probably the Cayman Islands or something like that. Um, but I love getting up close. This is in the Red Sea, and there's a little clownfish, Nemo, down there with the in the anemone. That was a lot of fun. That's in about 100 feet of water. It was
Now,
in Egypt.
when you're scuba diving and taking pictures, is your wife with you also, or is anybody with you?
Well, yeah, it's a bad idea to scuba dive by yourself. So the answer is yes. She's usually fortunately, Sandra and both kids all scuba dive, and so it makes a great family vacation if you're into that. And so the answer is usually, you know, not on this dive. She didn't go with me on this trip, but she's usually my dive partner. That's in the Red Sea as well. It's a lionfish down there. And it's interesting when get if the sun is real low in the sky under the water, it gets this little dappled light effect.
Boy,
You
yeah.
get these little sunbeams in there, and it's just really phenomenal. That is a lot of fun.
When did you start deciding you wanted a scuba dive and take pictures? When did that come about?
2009, actually, I remember the year on that one, because I had, when you're diving, sometimes you'll rent a little box camera and take some stuff in there, it's universally horrible. Um, and then I ended up getting like a little point and shoot in a housing, and my daughter sang for Voices in the Laurel, which is a wonderful choral group that's headed by Martha Brown here in Haywood County. She sang for them for 10 years, and they would on a lot of the summers they would do international trips, and so they sang in the Sydney Opera House, which was a lot of fun. So of course I had to go and be their photographer, and we ended up doing some scuba diving in the Great Barrier Reef off Australia. And I took a couple of pictures with a little point and shoot, and I'm like, oh, this can be actually kind of decent. And so then I ended up getting, to do good underwater photography, you've got your regular digital SLR camera in this big old housing to keep it dry. And also when you're underwater, once you get down below 10 feet or so, all the red is gone because it was absorbed by the water. And so if you want to have color on anything, like in this picture of this is probably about 30 feet of water. And so if I took this without a flash, it would be totally blue gray. But so you have to have a strobe, you have to have a flash or two with you. So you end up with the housing is kind of huge. I have a picture. I have a picture of it later. But the underwater stuff is a lot of fun. Now, one thing that I would recommend, let's say if you're sort of into diving and say, oh, I think I'll, do serious photography while doing it. You don't want to do that unless you're really comfortable with scuba diving, because, scuba diving is a potentially, dangerous sport. And if you're not paying attention to what you're doing, it can end badly. So you want to be pretty comfortable in the water before you introduce another technical thing to that, because that, you could get in trouble.
John, let me ask you this. How do you learn how to take these kind of pictures? In other words, did you study this, or you just YouTubed it, or how do you pick up these skills?
Well, with the photography, underwater stuff, a lot of it is in just actually there are some excellent books on underwater photography, and I've read some of those, and it's like it's not just point and shoot. You want to kind of pay attention to what you're doing and compose and things like that. And for example, like on and it's paying attention to it. And so, for example, in this was off of Catalina Island in near Los Angeles. They had these fish swimming around, and I'm basically holding the camera where pointed toward the sun, and then I'm waiting for the fish to swim into the frame. And so a lot of underwater photography is patience, where you see a nice composition where like, okay, well this would be good if there was a fish right here. And so it's a good idea to just sit there and wait, and if you're lucky, a fish will swim by and you can catch them, or and sometimes they don't, and sometimes you waste your time, but it's still fun. Yeah, this is off of Blue Heron Bridge in West Palm Beach, Florida, and that is a flying Giraldi or flying something. I'm drawing a blank on the name, flying Giraldi, I believe. But he's just laying on the sand, and so I'm laying on the sand in front of him, just getting right in front of him and hitting him with the camera, and that's his real. I brought it up just a little bit, but basically those are his real colors. He just looks like a devilfish. It's very cool. It's one of my favorite ones. Um, and this is also when you're a scuba diver, one thing that you like to do is a night dive, and so this was at night in the Cayman Islands. And these little coral polyps, see right in the middle, that's kind of what they look like during the day, but at night those little polypy things around the edge come out, and that's its mouth in the middle, and that's when they feed. So, and you can actually hold a light next to it, and you get these little red bloodworms that will kind of follow your light, and the coral will grab it, and you can actually feed the coral little bloodworms from the light from your camera, which is really interesting. But you can see right in the middle, those little these little polyps are just starting to come out, and so that's this is about maybe an inch and a half square. So it's a close up.
Yeah,
I do a
I
lot
was
of
going to
close
say
up.
that. Yeah, how close were you when you were taking this? How close are you to this?
Oh, like the lens is maybe 3 or 4 inches away from the subject there. So the in underwater photography, you usually either do real wide angle, because you have to get close to the subject. Back where this guy, you can see there's a little bit of color on him, where you have to be within about 4 feet of your subject, or else the strobe just doesn't hit the subject underwater because water is so dense. And so that's what makes it difficult to photograph sharks, because they're usually going away from you. They don't want anything to do with you. So you got to get close to them in order to get any decent color. So like these things like this, where you're right on it, that's not a problem. Um, this is obviously that's natural light here. That's in the Cayman Islands. That's a tarpon in the middle of that.
How far deep are you into the water?
Here, maybe 30 feet, something like that.
Okay.
I prefer, yeah, I've been over 100 feet, numerous times, but there's no really reason to go that deep unless there's something there you want to see, because when you're diving, the deeper you go, the shorter your dive. It's just the way the air compression works. And this is on the top of a wreck. I think that's in the Caymans as well. This is one of my favorite ones. It's a green moray eel. He's about 6 or 8 feet long. And occasionally, most of the time when you see a moray eel when you're diving, it's kind of hidden in the rocks and it sticks his little mouth out, kind of,
Right.
grinning at you. But occasionally you'll see one out free swimming, and they're just the most beautiful thing ever. They're just like a long snake, and I got really fortunate on this one. He kind of did that pose right in front of me, and I got him in focus. A lot of it is luck because something happens real fast. You try to shoot it, and it's like, oh, either the flash was wrong, or the it's out of focus or whatever. Sometimes you get lucky. And that was one I'm saying. Same like this.
Well, that's no shot.
Yeah. So basically, the background is exposed with the time and the f-stop, and then the foreground is exposed by the flash. Yeah. Now this one I added the background a little bit. This is no, it's not a piranha. It is a barracuda, but they're usually long and skinny. But I finally got him where he's pointed at me, and got that view of him, which I really think is a lot of cool. Is very cool. And this is as obviously a hammerhead shark. This is in the Galapagos, and there's some of the dives there where they just have hammerhead sharks just like crazy, and that is just an amazing place to go if anybody ever wants to do a really amazing dive. The Galapagos is fantastic.
When you're in the water, have you ever been attacked by any of these fish?
Um, Only a manta ray. Um, it's maybe a little longer story than I want to get into, but in Hawaii, they had this manta ray dive where they put these big lights in the water. It attracts a bunch of plankton, which then attracts all these big 15-foot manta rays, and there are like 15 of them in the water moving around. And one of them, just as I was ascending, one of them, was doing a big barrel roll and whams into the back of me. And my camera that has this strobe arm on it, and the strobe hung on his shoulder. And so, I hang on to it for about half a second until I realize, well, this is not working. And so, so he's swimming around with this camera on his shoulder. Eventually, I actually did get the camera back, which was amazing. But so that's the only wildlife that has attacked me so far. No sharks yet.
Hopefully it'll stay that way.
Yeah, this was these are all water lilies from that's what they look like underwater. This was in the cenotes and the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico. And those little squids, they're so cute.
By the way, as you're showing them, let me ask you this, John. If folks that want to see your stuff, is it available on a website, or you have exhibits?
Actually, yes, there is. I'll send you a link to it. It's too long and weird to just say
Okay.
out loud.
And by the way, I'll put that in the description of the show, so
Yeah.
that'd be great. So they can
Okay,
see
yeah.
your work. Are you ever on exhibits elsewhere, or people can see
I've
your
had a
stuff?
couple around, like the one that you saw at Green Sage. I've had one at the Arts Council over in Waynesville. But usually, and the walls of my dental office, they're covered with them.
Or how about it? I'm
But
serious. I was going to ask you, how about at Hart? Have you ever been on display at Hart?
actually, yeah, they've had some on the wall there as well.
Okay.
And I think when they did Under the Sea, they did
Oh, great.
Little Mermaid. We had some underwater pictures there. Yeah, this one's a close up as well. These are a thing called cup coral. This is at night where they have these little tentacles coming out, and that's a close up of them. There's this little mouth in the middle. I love these things. And this is that's the underwater housing, and that's me off the back of a boat. But there happen to be those little orange guys. Those are little areas of cup coral that they come out at night. So I just sort of jumped in with the camera, and I'm just got a snorkel, and I'm just at the surface. I mean, which I'm usually not doing because doing it with a snorkel is very difficult actually. But basically, you can see on the right. This is the strobe, the little white cylinder thing on the right. That's a strobe. There's one behind my arm on the left. And in front of me is the underwater camera, which I'm holding. So, and whoa, what happened to that? It's and this is a great white shark, and this is the only time that I did any shark photographs where I was actually in a cage. which, these things are 16 feet long. So I figured that was kind of okay. That's what the cage looks like. We got two of those. And these cages are 8 feet long. And when the shark would go next to him, he was as long as both of them put together. It's like, holy smokes. Those things are gnarly looking. And of course, a dentist has to show pictures of shark teeth.
You were saying before about the expense of this just for the cameras. But aside from just the cameras, this is also some expensive hobby just to get to places and then just rent that cage or, it's
Yeah.
a major
You know, tra-
production.
yeah, travel is a big part of it. Actually, this is from the boat. This was actually I'm standing on the boat as he comes up. Um, this is a little arrow crab. You can see those little blue claws there. Those are quite common in the Caribbean. And doing some close-up stuff on land, there's some little itty bitty little spiders, which are really cute.
What's
So
incredible, John, as I'm looking at these pictures, and I thank you for sharing them, is that this is stuff you never see before. I've never seen this, just with a camera
yeah,
or that you pick up like the stuff underwater. I've never seen that stuff before, so it's really cool.
it is amazing what's out there. And the close-up macro, because it's called macro photography or close-up photography, that is just it's like a whole nother world. Because you see if you see the spider on the floor or something
Right,
like that, I mean it's maybe like maybe a quarter inch long. If you look at it closely with your naked eye, you don't see any of this stuff.
right, yeah.
All the little hairs and all the little eyeballs. When you get a close-up picture, I was like, wow, they're really kind of cute.
Yeah.
Maybe. I don't know. It's fitting on what you're into, I guess. Uh, but that's fun. And that's what the flash will stop the motion of a hummingbird's wing. That was off the kitchen porch. Um, like underwater, this is a mermaid. This is actually my goddaughter in the Florida Keys. Um, and she's normally a pharmacist, but she does this for fun. And so she's holding on to a nurse shark there. Now, and if you're a diver, well, nurse sharks are really tame. They're technically sharks, but they don't bother you. Um, this is now one of the other things that I'm doing a lot of is underwater model photography, which is kind of like the mermaids, but that's in the ocean. But this was photographed in a swimming pool. Now, right above her head, actually, what you see is actually her reflection in the water. And this is one where I did change the background in Photoshop. The gold thing she's holding is actually in her hands, but the background and the circular thing, it kind of looks like a dish. So that's all Photoshop as well. This is also in a swimming pool. That's not really Photoshopped, but there's a light, in front of the model, which illuminates her, but the red light, you see, there's actually a strobe light behind it. This was done, with a guy I know in Los Angeles who is a professional underwater model photographer. Actually, there is such a thing, not many. And so this was in his pool, and he supplied the models, and he was kind of helping with technique and stuff like that. The way I got started with the underwater model stuff is interesting because I had seen a couple of pictures of that. There's one famous one taken in the 40s of a lady in a white dress kind of floating face up in the water. And I always thought it was just a beautiful image. And every once in a while, when Sandra and the kids were at some place and there's a swimming pool where we're diving, I would dunk them in the water and take some, pictures of the pool. And it was, typically a disaster. And so I figured that what I would do is go talk to a professional and find out how this works. And there, just like anything else, there are tricks. This is actually me photographing my beautiful daughter in a swimming pool, and basically like some black sheets behind her to make the black background. So like in here, you see it's all black behind her. There's a black background in the pool like this. And I've got the strobe on the camera. You can see the camera. Here I'm using a scuba tank. And she'll just go down there and flow down into the water a little bit and then go up, take a breath, grab the ladder, and rest in between. Usually what I will do is I'll go and I'll just go into the water when the model goes down, and I'm usually not using scuba tanks. So I studied with a couple of professionals at doing this and gotten, figured out, how this thing works, because, doing it by myself just wasn't really working well.
I guess you were lucky too, that you showed a couple pictures of your daughter, that you were lucky she was a willing participant in this.
Oh yes, and, fortunately she's diving since she was 12. She's on the swim team. She's very comfortable in the water, and she's a great model, so she can, she can hold her breath. This
John,
was also
let,
done with Photoshop.
let me just ask you a question back to your daughter or some of these shots you're showing. If somebody wanted to also get into this hobby or this passion, this interest, what's the best way to do it? Do you study it? Do you go with somebody? Do you watch YouTube clips? What's the best way to learn?
There are some YouTube clips out there, but the best way to do this is just go and train with someone who knows what they're doing. That's really the best way to do it.
And did you do that?
Well,
Did you
that's what
do?
I did.
Okay, gotcha.
My first one was in Palatka, Florida, and I've done a couple in Los Angeles. So there are three different people that I've studied with: Brett Stanley and Christy Sutton, and see, in Palatka, the name escapes me. That's been a few years. But this was also with Photoshop. There's like a classical painting with a lightning bolt in the background, and so put her in front of it. Uh, that was also shot in a swimming pool, like that.
Very cool.
And one thing about, and this is my daughter Becky, and one of the neat things about the underwater stuff, like what hair does underwater, it just floats around. Hair and fabric are just amazing underwater. You get poses that you can't do on land, which really makes it a lot of fun. It makes it very different. So you can see with the way the fabric is just kind of floating around there, and the hair is floating around. You cannot do this pose on land.
And isn't that
So
what I first saw? I think I saw an exhibit of you.
that one was one of the shows there you saw.
Right.
Yeah, and, and it's played a little bit in the background, but that light was there, actually there, in the pool. And that's Becky again. This actually was shot sideways, so the image on her right, she's looking up, and the image on her left is her reflection in the water. And then I, did the background all in interesting colors and stuff like that. So that's Becky. That's one of my favorites. Another underwater one. And this is where Brett, he poured some milk into the water to make it look foggy, which is interesting. And he said, "Oh, it filters out. Don't worry about it." Okay, which is cool. Um, and mermaids are actually a thing. There are a number of women who are really into being mermaids, and it's really interesting. Now this is actually uh, oh gosh, give me a senior moment. This actually is Hannah Fraser. She was actually, as mermaids go, she's probably the most famous one out there, and so I got to photograph her off of Catalina as well, and that's her close up, out of her mermaid thing, and the light is natural in that one. Now back to land, it was some basically landscape stuff. This is why I love Haywood County. It's the mountains here in western North Carolina are just beautiful. It's a little sunrise there. And when we were traveling, my daughter tried skydiving and it didn't work out so well. Actually, she just, her sister, was holding on, then, she would balance like that, and then she would just run out of the frame, would take a couple of pictures, so like that. So, unfortunately, to have kids with a good sense of humor. And some of the travels, that's the Great Wall of China, which was amazing. And when I was going down it, I was thinking of, speaking of sense of humor, I was thinking to myself, I wish I'd brought a slinky. That would be fun. Have that go down the Great Wall of China. There's the Horseshoe Bend in Arizona, and there's my dog Riley. This is in Hong Kong, which is they filmed one of the Transformer movies in this apartment complex, which is interesting. So it was interesting. I never would have found this. We got lucky that that somebody in Hong Kong took us to where this was. Otherwise, we never would have found it. But I've been to China twice doing photographs there, which was amazing. This is Guilin Province. All those little funky mountains there. I thought those are just absolutely amazing. And this is Northern Ireland. It's a place called the Dark Hedges, and it's the entrance to some some mansion or something like that, and they planted all these trees a zillion years ago, and there's like one spot where it looks like this. If you move forward or back 50 feet, it looks kind of boring. But there's one area where you can just sort of see all those interlacing trees, which is just amazing. The dark hooded figure at the end is Becky, my daughter. That was in China as well. The cormorant fisherman, which was a lot of fun. This guy's 88, and he used to be a fisherman, but now he basically poses for tourists.
A
That's his
quick
brother.
quick question. I'm just wondering. So a ballpark figure for every like this picture, how many other pictures do you have to shoot to get a final one that that you're proud of?
Usually a lot. That's the nice thing about digital. You
Right.
can just, shoot until your fingers bleed. See, and that's why it's so much easier than film, because with film, you got, 36 pictures on a roll, and you have to, like, be a little more judicious about it. With here, you can play around with stuff, and also you can see what you got. With film, you see what you got once it comes back and gets developed, and like, oh shoot, I mean, I was either overexposed or underexposed or whatever, and it's kind of a mess.
The only problem with digital
So
though, John, is then you have to go through them all though. In other words, if you shoot several
yeah,
hundred, 1,000
uh,
pictures, that's a lot of
well,
pictures.
I've gotten to where I can go through them pretty quick.
Okay.
It's like shooting a heart show. I'll easily take 1,000 pictures. But I could go through them in a half an hour. It's like, okay, click, 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 yes, yes, yes. Oh, no, 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 no. Yes, no, 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 no. Yes. I mean, it's actually pretty easy. That's the cormorant fisherman with the cormorant bird there. Now, the funny story, when I was there, I was with a guide, obviously, who spoke Chinese because I don't. And we're setting up some shops with and those birds have this distinctive thing where they're drying their wings. And we were doing a shot, and it was in the boat there, and once his wings are dry, he'll put his wings down, and it's not as photogenic. And so I mentioned to the guide, oh, the bird put his wings down, and he says something to the guy in Chinese, and the fisherman grabs the bird by the throat, dunks him in the water, swishes him around a little bit, sticks him back up in there. The bird's like, oh God, now I'm wet again. So he sticks his wings out. I was just dying laughing with that. Uh, and we did have, this is the eclipse in 2017. Um, we had the recent one here, and even though I've been taking pictures a long time, it doesn't always work out the way you want. I went to Indianapolis to see the eclipse this time and had some technical difficulties. So I really didn't get what I wanted, which was pretty annoying. Um, Shooting totality is harder than it looks, and you don't get to practice. So anyway, so that's it for these guys. Um,
Well, John, let me just
there we
mention a
are.
couple of things. So you can come back out of this. So let's go back to the full screen, you and me. And I should just
Okay.
mention a couple of things. One, if by chance anybody's listening to this, you really have to go see it. And so you'll see wherever you found this show, you'll also see where the YouTube video is. So I really encourage people to look at the show as you're talking about it, because these pictures are just incredible, John. So to listen to them is okay, but to actually see them is incredible. Last question to ask you, one of the last questions. Moving forward, I'll sometimes ask actors, do they have a dream role? In terms of a photographer, do you have a dream shoot you'd like to take pictures of?
Um, Let me see. Also, Playboy doesn't do Playmate centerfolds anymore. But I would never say that, of course. The I want another shot at the eclipse.
Okay.
Um, there'll be in Spain in 2026 and Egypt in 2027. So
Will you
you
go to
never know.
them, you think?
I may. I haven't made a decision, but you never know. But there's some areas in the diving in the Pacific Rim, Palau and Guam and Truk and areas like that. I understand the diving in the Pacific Rim is just amazing, and they have these little things called nudibranchs, which is like these little sea slugs, very colorful. I've shot a couple of those, but they're much more plentiful in the Pacific areas, and so that's on the list as well. But it's a long way to get to that. Probably wait till I'm more retired, because I'm still working full time. Now, but I'll get there
And do you
for
have a
sure.
dream camera you want to get?
The ones I have work fine. In the old days, everybody would lust after a Hasselblad,
Right, right.
and but those are studio cameras. They're really big and they're heavy. The ones they have now, I shoot Canon. Canon, Nikon, Sony, they're all excellent. It's all what you do with it. This has nothing to do with the camera. But the ones they have now are like amazing, and they're the mirrorless. Everything's going mirrorless now, so they're a lot quieter than they used to be. So they don't have the mirror goes ka-chunk, which is really loud, and so they're quieter and they're lighter than they used to be. So that's good. So the technology is just getting better and better.
And so, John, if folks want to track you down or see your work, you're going to send me the website, which I'll put in the description of this show. Is that the best way to follow you on Facebook or LinkedIn, or is there a way to follow
Uh,
you?
I put some stuff on Facebook occasionally. I don't put stuff on. I'm not a Instagram or TikToker or anything like that, so I don't do much of that. So basically, there's a Smug Mug website. They're basically I whenever I do a shoot, an underwater shoot, or a trip, or any of the Heart plays, those are all on there. Those go back many, many years, and so there's more photos on there that you can check and stick at.
Okay. Well, anyway, I want to thank you for being my guest on this edition of Blaine's World webcast, John. I'd also like to thank my producer, Cappy Tassetti, and I look forward to seeing you again
All
sometime
right.
soon at Hart, if not elsewhere. Okay, man.
See
Thanks.
you probably the Sacred Garden, which
Okay,
is the
that
next
sounds
show.
great, John. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, Blaine. Appreciate it.